Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to College Football Across the Nation, Episode 8. Your host, Phil Nunziata, with Ryan Mock in the studio, brought to you by Spreaker.com in association with National Sports. Upset City swept the nation this week as several undefeated and ranked teams go down, including Georgia, who took a loss to Missouri. How does that affect the SEC? And we'll also talk about the University of Texas shocking the world. All this and more on College Football Across the Nation that starts right now. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to College Football Across the Nation. Phil Nunziata, Ryan Mock in studio. After a surprising bye week, I want to go ahead and apologize for that. That was my fault. Had a lot going on. Had weddings and school and all that sort of stuff. So we're back now. Thanks for hanging with us. And Ryan, we had quite the week of college football. Where do we start?
Well, you got to start from the top. Texas. It's coming out of nowhere and beating Oklahoma. We talked about Texas a lot this season, and wow, they came out and showed a lot of heart and a lot of power that I didn't know they had, especially from the defense. They got a big pick six early in the game. I watched that game. The Cotton Bowl always starts at noon. It's a great atmosphere. And from the Texas side of the ball, you have to be thrilled. And it brings up a lot of questions about Mac Brown's future. And also from the other side, Oklahoma. We see them start out good. People start believing in them, and then they lay an egg. I like to start with the Cotton Bowl. Texas beating Oklahoma is a big win for Texas.
Well, even though we didn't have our show last week, we've actually given this particular game plenty of airtime just leading up to it. And Case McCoy, of course, got the start. I think it's safe to say that he's going to be the starter from here on out. And you look at this game, and I think we both agreed that this was a job-saving game for Mac Brown. They needed to come out and play Inspire football. Texas, of course, to save his job. And they came right out, and they played probably the best complete game they could have played against Oklahoma.
Absolutely. Case McCoy managed the ball game well. He threw one interception. It was late in the game when Texas was already up. It was like 36-13 at the time. They were beating them pretty good. But Texas came out and they ran the ball. They had Gray running it 29 times for 123 yards. They were pounding them. They kept the ball away from Bob Stoops and that powerful offense of Oklahoma. And it just seemed like Oklahoma, when they got down, they could never get up. Blake Bell, he was on his back all day long. Texas was bringing a lot of heat. It was a big win. You had to be impressed with the way that Texas has responded here. They dropped the 1-2 with two bad losses to BYU and Ole Miss. They come back against Kansas State, Iowa State, and now the big one against Oklahoma, which they have really played bad in the last 2 years, not even close. They got outscored 130-something to 30 or something. It was really bad. And I'll be honest with you, I was watching this game. I did not expect what I saw. And Texas looked like a completely different football team. I remember leading into the season, everybody's like, look out for the Longhorns this year. I thought they would be better, and then you saw what they did early in the year. But it seems like they're coming together. And under Case McCoy, he didn't put up eye-popping numbers, but he managed the game. He put his team in the right spots, and he threw a lot of big third-down completions, including one late in the first half on the right sideline for like a 60-yard bomb. So looking ahead for Texas, I think they could make some noise in the Big 12. They're still 3-0. They could still make a BCS game, and that would be quite an accomplishment for the start of the season for Texas.
Well, it seemed like just yesterday that everybody was ready to leave Texas for dead after starting 1-2 and the embarrassing loss they had to BYU, and you hit the nail on the head. This team is 4-2, and more importantly, they're 3-0 in their conference, and they just beat the biggest dog in that conference. So you look at this game, and I agree, Case McCoy did exactly what he needed to do. The running game definitely helped with this. Jonathan Gray having 123 yards on the ground definitely helped out. And, as we said with Case McCoy, he manages the game because that's just the way Texas's offense is. It's more run-oriented. Texas leading receiver had only 59 yards, and he got all that on one play as he went into the end zone on it. But this team, they're really finding who they are offensively. Their defense, other than the BYU game, is something that, of course, they fired the coordinator, something that there's always been questions for, and they stepped up, only giving up 20 points to Oklahoma. And, more important than any of this, you could say, is I think Mac Brown, they were fighting for Mac Brown and his job in this game.
Oh, you could tell. Just looking at Texas coming into the state, and they were fired up. They were ready to make a statement. I don't think anybody in the nation saw it coming, and they did. It It was a big game. They even gave him a Gatorade bath at the end of the game. You don't see that a lot, especially in a regular season game at Texas, because you're expected to win there most of the time. But it goes to show you what this win means for this program moving forward. I mean, a lot of recruits go to this game to see, okay, what am I looking at? And if you were undecided, this could really change your mind, because it looked like Oklahoma had all the momentum. And from their standpoint, it seems like every season with Oklahoma, they get you thinking they could be good. They went to Notre Dame and won in South Bend a couple of weeks ago. I don't know how good Notre Dame is, but just coming back here and beginning of the game, they just didn't look like they wanted to be there. And Texas took full advantage of him in the mouth. And I always question it about Bob Stoops. What does it take for Oklahoma to get over that hump that they've been under the last few years when it looks like they're getting rolling and they just lay an egg? And it's not good because they got outplayed in every facet and they didn't even really look inspired. They didn't look like they were fired up to be there.
Yeah, I mean, people give teams like Clemson and Florida State that bad rap of, really tripping up when they have greater things to accomplish. Oklahoma could easily be put in that category. As you said, they look like they can really make some noise nationally, and then they have a performance like this one. And because you look at this score, and honestly, I don't think it was that close, but even if you're looking at this score, this isn't a last-second field goal win for Texas. This is could have easily been 3-possession win.
Yeah, it was 36-13, like 4 minutes to go in the game, and McCoy threw a pick six, which was meaningless. They was trying to run out the clock. Defensive lineman tipped the ball up, so really, it wasn't even close. Texas dominated them from start to finish. All the big plays came there. All the big third downs came from the burnt orange sideline. They're ready to go, and Oklahoma moving forward, they can still win the Big 12 and have a rematch maybe with Texas moving forward, but I don't see it after this performance. It's going to be hard for them to get back up because this is what you play for early in the year, and you get beat and not even come close. It's very disheartening if you're a Sooner.
Well, you look at this tends to happen around the same time of year every year because we're about at mid-season. The injuries really take its toll. These are where a lot of these rivalry games are put right in the center of the season. Definitely one of the bigger games that both of these teams look for, and it'll be interesting to see if Oklahoma rights the ship or if they allow this to derail their season. And speaking of derailed seasons, you like that segue?
Very well, very good.
Georgia had quite the derailing loss to Missouri this week, and you want to talk about another game that wasn't even close. 41-26, the Tigers manhandled Georgia, and I think this is a case of injuries finally catching up to Georgia on top of this hellacious schedule that we've talked about, it seems, every week. Georgia really takes a hard one here, and Missouri is looking nice and pretty at 6-0 right now.
Usually when a team in the SEC is undefeated, they're like, what, number 1, number 2 in the nation?
You would think.
I mean, Missouri's 6-0, ladies and gentlemen, in case you haven't noticed, and they're sitting at 25. I mean, they got a big game against Florida, but you looking at the Georgia side here, I feel very bad for this team, especially Aaron Murray. We talked about their schedule early in the year. They came out unscathed, just a 3-point loss at Clemson, and the 3 points at Clemson is nothing to hang your head about. They did what they needed to do. They wrote the ship, came back and won some huge games against LSU, teams like that, and they make it through that stretch, and bam. Look at that. You're missing. You're down to your third-team running back. You're down to your third-team wide receiver, and it really showed between the hedges and Athens this Saturday. And Missouri jumped out to a 28-10 lead. Georgia came back, but it was just too much to ask for them. You could really see the depth starting to show itself late in the game because usually these players that were trying to make the comeback are usually coming in the third for a couple plays, the fourth for a couple plays, just to add some depth, give their stars a couple series off or a play off. But they just seemed to run out of steam as they tried to make a comeback. Missouri took full advantage of it. Moving forward for Missouri, they're 6-0 in the SEC East, and everybody's talking about South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida in the East. Well, don't look any further. Right now, we got an undefeated team over there, but the big question is they lost their quarterback, Franklin. He's a great leader for them, and we'll see what Matty Mock can do moving forward for Missouri. They got 3 games coming up at home. It'll make and break their season for the SEC East, but for this one, you have to feel bad for Georgia because I don't see them coming back from this loss and making their goal at the SEC championship.
I mean, the Tigers were able to, operate pretty efficiently even when their starting quarterback went down. They, had 2 late touchdown drives to really put this out of reach. But, it'll be interesting to see how, getting plugged into a game is sometimes, the best thing that can happen. The game's already going. You have no choice but to try to play to the best of your ability. But when you have to start a game as a backup, and a freshman backup no less, that can be a totally different scenario. It will be interesting to see how this team goes on without James Franklin, who is out for a undetermined at the moment amount of time. But Missouri, of course, nobody, as you said, is really talking about this team, although they are 6-0 in the SEC. If any other team in the SEC was 6-0, they probably would have already put their name on the trophy. Alabama 6-0, but other than that, Missouri is just a nice surprise here, and Georgia, they could only have so much left after the way their season started, and this was just proof of, lack of depth and just the way their schedule took its toll.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're looking at Georgia here, then, them trying to get back into the SEC East picture, they already just lost to Missouri, the number 1 team over there right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to lie to you, I don't see why Missouri, even with the loss of Franklin, can't win this. I mean, they have Florida coming in next week. Yeah, their quarterback's not going to be playing, and they're playing a very good defense in Florida. But what makes you think that Florida's going to go in there and score a lot of points? They haven't proven that they can do that. So that's a very winnable game. They got the game after that versus South Carolina is really going to be tough.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Franklin will be back for that game. It'll be huge. I think possibly they could skate by Florida next week without their quarterback, but you're going to have to put some points up against South Carolina because they can score. So if he comes back, I don't see why they can't win at least one of these 2 games. And think of it, they played, looking at their schedule, they played Georgia, Florida, and South Carolina, the 3 teams that they're competing with for the SEC East in a row. But if they can survive one of these next 2 games, I don't see why they can't. Because even if one of these teams will have a tiebreaker, I still see these teams like Florida and South Carolina losing again to an SEC opponent.
Right. I mean, really, when you look at this whole schedule, Florida, already has 2 losses. If they're able to beat them, then it really pulls them out of contention. As far as winning their side, they are very much in control of their own destiny. All these teams, not knowing that they were going to be in this spot, they've been catapulted now to rank number 14 after that win. They really have control, and they're looking as good as any team in their half of the SEC to get there.
Absolutely, and then if you get past South Carolina, you got Tennessee, which they should be able to beat, at Kentucky, at Ole Miss, and versus Texas A&M. They should be able to win. They'll probably beat Ole Miss, I would say, in Kentucky. I mean, they can. The last game of the season against Texas A&M, yeah, I don't know if they can beat them, but Texas A&M is in the SEC West, so it's not going to hurt their chances because Florida, South Carolina, and Georgia are going to be so banged up by then, and I don't think they'll be in contention anyways. Maybe South Carolina, but it'll be interesting to see what they do. But it's nice to see Missouri kind of stepping up and adding a new wrinkle to the SEC this year instead of the same teams. I know a lot of people get tired of it, and it's good to see Missouri, and hopefully they can keep it going without their quarterback and getting back and keep heading in the right direction for not only this year but years to come.
Yeah, we talk about the SEC and how many good teams there is, in that, and the catch-22 of that is if you lose one game, that could spell the end for you. And here's a team, now transitioning to the team that Missouri will play next week, losing a game that looked pretty lackluster on their end. Florida Gators dropping one to LSU 17-6. It was at LSU. You do have to bring that into account. LSU did not put up the points that they normally do. That's probably in large part due to the very good defense that Florida does have. But LSU able to get this win, and now Florida, as far as an SEC title hopes, seem to almost be all but over.
Yeah, I don't see Florida. They just, let's face it, folks, they just don't have the offense for it.
Exactly.
We thought maybe with Tyler Murphy, we saw him get a spark for a little while without Driscoll. But his first major challenge, because the last couple of weeks he came in the middle of Tennessee game, and Tennessee's, they're not that good. They play Kentucky, Kentucky's Kentucky, and they played Arkansas at home, and we thought, okay, maybe they put 30 up against Arkansas. Maybe they're moving forward when we see Arkansas lose like 36-7 to South Carolina this week. So I don't know how much stock you can put in that. And when it seems like they play a good team with a good defense that just can't score, especially in somebody else's house, and you're going to have to score points if you want to win the SEC. And I don't even know if they can beat Missouri without their starting quarterback this weekend is because I don't see them putting points up. I know Missouri probably doesn't have the defense LSU has, but LSU's defense has been subpar this year.
Right.
LSU's been a complete flip-flop of what they normally are. They're a great offensive team, and I don't know what the problem is, but it just seems like they're not on the same page. They move slow. They're not open. They don't break plays. It's very weird for me to sit here and see Florida so stagnant offenses, but the truth of the matter is they just don't have it, and it's really costing them. They got a great defense, but the offense just isn't caliber enough to be a major player in the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, unless the Gator defense just totally shuts down any and all offense that Missouri has, there's no reason Missouri can't come out and win this game. You look at the Gators, they scored 6 points last week, one field goal in the first quarter and another in the fourth. So it leads you to believe that what do they do in the meat of the game? The answer to that is not much. They really, just haven't shown any offensive firepower through the course of this year. Even in games that they've won, you never turned around and gawked at any big plays or any yardage that they had. They won some games that they definitely should have won, but whenever it comes to anything that can hold a candle to that defense, it's lights out for Florida. They're not pulling off these big wins like they need to.
I mean, it's just tough for their defense because it seems like they gave up 17 to 20 points in the ball game. It's crazy. I mean, they only put 24 up against Kentucky, and a lot of that was because their defense got big turnovers in their own side of the field for Kentucky, and it just I don't know exactly what the big deal is. I mean, Tyler Murphy or Jeff Driscoll, you can go either way. To me, they're about the same. I'd say maybe Tyler Murphy might be a little bit faster, but they just don't. The receivers don't get open. They don't have a lot of chunk yard plays. When they do get first down, it's got to be 10 yards, first down, 10 yards. They don't spread the field on you. They're just really struggling. And Will Muschamp, I mean, you got to give him credit for his defense he's brought to Florida, but that's another guy you got to be wondering how long the Gators are going to put up with 6 points against LSU. Granted, it's LSU, but when you're at Florida, you're expected to put points up. You're expected to be exciting. And right now, offensively, they're just not that good. And for LSU, looking at their side, they jumped up from number 10 to number 6 right now. So, and they only have one loss, and they lost to Georgia. And at the time, Georgia was still Georgia before they were decimated with injuries. And looking at their side, they're still right back in this national championship hunt. And in the SEC West, they only have one loss in the conferences to Georgia. So they're going to play Alabama soon. And so if they beat them, they'll win the tiebreaker. So there's still a lot on the line for LSU. Their season is just beginning, if you ask me, and they're getting better, especially on defense. We know what their offense is capable of doing. Yeah,
I mean, LSU is not in a bad spot considering everything that's happened through the course of this year. We have in a week where there's just been a shell shock of upsets and a lot of big name teams going down. We still have a few more to get to, but it really puts some teams that wouldn't otherwise be there in prime positions. Really, the other big shock of the weekend was Utah upsetting number 5 Stanford, a 6-point win. And Stanford, we had talked about it, at least 2 or 3 times this season so far. How good are they? And not that it's it's a 6-point loss. It's not the way Georgia lost or anything like that. But you look at this game, and this is one that they definitely should have won, and this puts Oregon in a very good spot. They were able to beat Washington State the other week. So as far as the Pac-12 goes, this really helps them, Oregon, that is, towards winning the Pac-12, and it does not get much easier for Stanford because they have to face number 9 UCLA coming up.
Yeah, we questioned how good Stanford really was offensively. We knew they had a really good defense, and they jumped out. Stanford is a 14-14 going to the second. It was 21-14 going to halftime, and it was a close game back and forth. Stanford didn't really give Utah the game; just Utah outplayed them. They made bigger plays, and they needed to make big plays. And they went into Utah, Stanford. I don't know if they overlooked them. I don't think they would because they're not a dominant team, but that's not an easy place to play, and we've seen them pull upsets there before. And Utah just went out there and outplayed them. It does make me question how good Stanford really was because usually in these upset type games, the number 5 team in the nation goes down to a team that's not ranked. The team that's not ranked has to play really well, and the team that is has to make a lot of mistakes. And watching this game, Stanford didn't really make that many mistakes. It's just Utah made more plays than them. it's really interesting to see what they're going to do moving on because they got to play UCLA. And UCLA right now is ranked in the top 10. They're as hot as any team in the nation. And Stanford could be in danger of dropping 2 in a row here, which nobody saw coming.
Yeah, and that just helps Oregon out, even more. So Stanford, we'll see. This is a game that I think we look towards at the beginning of the year anyway, because UCLA has done everything that's been asked of themselves, and they've been rewarded with a top 10 ranking. So that is a game that we're, going to be able to look towards. I think UCLA has the momentum. I feel that they could probably pull this win against Stanford, depending on how quickly they get over this loss to Utah.
It'll be an interesting game. I think it'll be a tight game. And just right now, midweek pick, if I had to make a pick, I would probably say I would go with UCLA. They're playing really good football right now. It is in Stanford, so that'll help Stanford out a lot. But how inspired is the crowd going to be? When you're number 5 in the nation coming off a loss, you're not going to go to national championship now when you lost to Utah. There's just too many good teams around right now, undefeated teams, one-loss teams that people are putting over them. They're probably the chances for the national championship is probably gone. Pac-12, they still play Oregon coming up, so that'll be huge because if they beat them head-to-head, we'll see how that is. And UCLA, you can't sleep on them for the Pac-12 either. It'll be a great game, but I think UCLA is more excited. They're more inspired, and I see them pulling a big win on the road in Stanford, and the Bruins continue to right the ship, and it set up a huge matchup with Oregon next week at Oregon. So the meat of the schedule for UCLA is coming up right now. We'll really see how good they are, but right now I think they have the upper hand on Stanford.
I think what it could come down to is Stanford, has been in the limelight for a while now. They've won some big bowl games this year. This is relatively new to UCLA. I think that might show here. I think they're gonna show up. They're gonna have their shoes a little shinier, their helmets a little shinier. I think they're the big spotlight in this it's nationally televised ABC on 3:30. I think they're going to show up just a little bit more just because they haven't had this kind of atmosphere at UCLA in quite a while, and that could easily be the difference. And now if I'm UCLA, if I'm a coach, if I'm a player in there, my opinion is we can take care of some serious business. If we take on Stanford and we take out Oregon, then there's no question what we're doing the rest of the year. We'll punch our ticket from there. They have a really good chance. Even if they win one of these games, they're not in terrible shape. I think Stanford is a much easier, I use the word easier, but a much more winnable game than Oregon. But if they're able to pull that off, the loss to Oregon, if that does happen, wouldn't hurt as bad for them. So really, we're going to see a lot about UCLA in the coming 2 weeks.
Yeah, we will. And realistically, winning both these games, because they are in Stanford and in Oregon, none of these 2 games are at home. If they can pull one of these wins out, we're just a great momentum builder for this program. It's nice to see them doing good. And just a team that you can easily pull for. I mean, they don't get a lot of recognition. They always seem like they get overlooked and just, hey, what they do, they go out there and win ball games. And we'll see what they're made of. We got Stanford this week, and then they go to Oregon next week. So the road ahead is still there for UCLA, but so far they've done what they need to do, and we'll see this Saturday if they can pull a big one at Stanford.
Yeah, after Stanford getting put in a bad place here, we'll see if UCLA can finish that off there after this big week of a lot of upsets here. And I don't know. I think we have one more upset on the tally here. Do you know anything about that, Ryan?
Yeah, there's a game in Happy Valley on Saturday.
Was there?
Does that bring anything up to your mind there?
Well, I was at a wedding, so you might have to tell me about it.
Well, there we go. Penn State played Michigan. We know about Michigan. They were still undefeated and all, and skating by people. Well, they fooled around one too many times and it bit them in Happy Valley this Saturday. Penn State coming up with a huge 4-overtime win. And you talk about a great game for Penn State. Come off a tough week. They lost to Indiana the week before. Didn't know how they would come out. And in true Penn State style, the way they fight in the grit of Penn State, came out there and fought Michigan tooth and nail. And somehow, some way, they were 3 points better at the end of the game. A hell of a win for Penn State last Saturday against Michigan.
Typically, if I miss a game, then I just miss a game. Like, I'll watch highlights and try and get a good opinion of this. I caught the last 2 overtimes of this, and I felt obligated to go on the Watch ESPN app, and I rewatched this whole game. I watched every snap, and if you haven't seen this game, if you're sitting around in the middle of the week when there's no football on, go back and watch this, and you will get a true understanding of how great of a game this was. Christian Hackenberg played amazing. He was the player of the week, nationally recognized, and very much so. Also, of course, freshman of the week. 305 yards and 3 touchdowns. He did throw 2 interceptions. 4 overtime game. Penn State came out hard. They were up 21-10 at the half, and then Michigan came back. And of course we had to go to overtime, and there was only 1 touchdown scored in the overtimes. A lot of field goals. Penn State blocked a field goal that would have easily won the game for them. They were in very makeable range. And Penn State, this game, to a team who can't go to bowl games, can't go to championships, this may have been the biggest game of their year. They have a few, they got Ohio State coming up, later in the year. But this is as big as it gets for if you're Penn State at the moment. And to see them rise to the occasion was just awesome.
Yeah, and we all know the circumstances at Penn State, and it's great to see that they can still beat the great teams in the Big Ten. They can line up in any given game and play with them. It's tough for them. We all know about the circumstances, but Michigan came in there and they hit them in the mouth. And Michigan came back, but at the end of the game, Penn State. Look at that drive that Christian Hackenberg put together at the end of the regulation there.
Mm-hmm.
That play down the left sideline, that guy going up making that play. You could really see the heart of Penn State. And that's what I admire so much about this team, because it doesn't matter what week they're coming off of, because they got beat by Indiana a few weeks ago. No matter what's going on, they move on to the next week. They put it behind them, and they give it their all each and every Saturday. And this is the biggest win, I would say, for Penn State in a while. And it's really great to see. It's great for their fan base. It's great for the coaching staff. It's great for the kids because they deserve this. And if you're Michigan, it's a heartbreaker, but you could just see it coming. Because how many weeks in a row are you going to get away with this? It doesn't matter who they're playing. They just don't put teams away. And it bit them this time to a very game Penn State football team.
Mm-hmm. And, you look at this game, there was... Towards that end, Bill Belton getting, the last touchdown, 4th and 1. You couldn't have asked for a better situation. Michigan anticipates they're going to run it up the middle. Bill Belton bounces it outside, and he was asked about it later. And he said, if I don't get that yard, I'm going to hear about it the rest of the time I'm here. And he, broke it outside. He went 3 yards untouched. And that place, that's why there's no roof on Happy Valley, because it would get blown off every week, and that's what happened there. And it is just a great win for them. Michigan, as you said, they can only deal with this for so long. Teams like Akron that they were, you can't. And Florida used to do this a lot too, and now it's on to catching up to them. You can win ugly every once in a while. That's going to happen, but use it as a wake up call. I feel all those ugly wins that Michigan has, they haven't responded to them the way the great teams do, and they paid for it here. Happy Valley, no matter how good or bad Penn State is always going to be a tough place to go in and win. I think everybody can agree on that. But Penn State, they're 4-2 now, and it really is just an honor to see Bill O'Brien do the amazing job that he's done. And a great win for Penn State, and great game. If you haven't seen it, you got to check it out.
Yeah, it's might be the game of the season.
I can see that.
And that fourth down you're talking about that Penn State put it away on, they could have kicked the field goal there and went to another overtime.
Right.
But it's just to show you they go for it.
Mm-hmm.
This team goes for it. They're not conservative. Heck with it. We've gotten this far. Let's get the dang yard. Let's go win the football game. And they got 3 dang yards and they won the football game. So it's great to see. It just the mindset of the team you can really see in that play, because they didn't want to go to another overtime, and they put it away with a great play, and it was an exciting game. One of the best games I've seen in a long time, if not ever. It was an amazing game.
That's the thing with Big Ten games. They have some of the more memorable ones, and for this one to go down the way it did, I'm glad it was Penn State to get this, because stuff like this just means. This would mean a lot to any team if you beat another team in your conference that's ranked when you're not ranked. Let alone be number 18. But I think Penn State, especially in their circumstances, would just appreciate it a little bit more. And this could have easily been their big game this year. But that definitely wrapped up a great week of upsets that we have here. And we're moving into the preview of next week, and we both pretty much agree here, me and Ryan, that there's one team that after everything that happens needs to be on upset alert. And we're not going to have to wait much longer to find out, because that game's on Friday night. Number 8 Louisville takes on my UCF Knights, and as long as I have a platform, their games will be talked about. So here's a game. UCF coming off a scare win against Memphis 2 weeks ago, having their bye week. made plays when it counted. Me personally, I feel they were looking ahead to this Louisville game because Louisville's the kings of their conference, and this is pretty much what has happened. Yet they came back and won a tough game against Memphis. Louisville, has had all smooth sailing. I picture Louisville. It's like a car on the highway, at midnight when there's no one else there. They've had very easy ride, and they've made it look that way. They're not like Michigan. They didn't get to 5-0, winning games by 3 or 4. I think their average win is 18 to 20 points. So Louisville has played good, but not great, and that might be what's needed. UCF's already played a good Penn State team and a pretty dang good South Carolina team. So I don't think they're going to be intimidated going into this game against Louisville.
Well, you're talking about Louisville going on the highway and everything's cool, and then there might be a nightmare coming.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you like that.
That's copyrighted.
Yeah. All right, but what you're saying, Louisville. I watched them last week against the Rutgers, and they only won. Was it 24-10? So they didn't really blow the wheels off of Rutgers like everybody wanted to see. And
24-10. Yep.
Yep, 24-10. And I could really see UCF going in there and winning this game. It'll be tough for them to do. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they got to go play Teddy Bridgewater in Louisville. That's no tall order, or that's no small order for UCF. But we know what UCF is. We know if you don't play your best ball against them at South Carolina, you can easily get beat. They came out a little short against Carolina by 3, though. So I look to see a great game. And what goes under the radar here is conference.
Yes.
You look in the American Conference. Both teams are undefeated. UCF's 1-0. Louisville's 2-0. UCF has one loss, but it's against the SEC team. That's not going to matter for the conference.
Right.
So beyond the national title hunt and everybody's thinking of Louisville, this is a big conference game because if UCF wins this game, the American is an automatic BCS conference, right?
Yes.
Yeah. They can find themselves in a BCS game.
This could happen.
This is how huge. And if you look at UCF's schedule, they got UConn. They can beat UConn.
It's pretty much conference games from here on out.
And there's nobody else on that schedule. USF, they're terrible. Rutgers maybe can get them a scare. But if UCF wins this game, they can find themselves in a BCS game somewhere. And then same thing for Louisville. So this is how big of a game this really is. I don't think Louisville will win the national championship if they do run the table just because their schedule. A lot of people say there's too many undefeated teams ahead of them. And then you got LSU. This is a huge game. Pretty much, I'd say the winner of this game goes on and wins the American Conference. And when you put a game like that on the line, I think it'll be a very even football game. It'll be interesting to see how UCF plays there, but we know that they can be in the big spotlight. They went to Happy Valley and won. You saw how that place is. So this isn't going to be, like you were saying, an intimidating game for UCF. They're going to go in there and give their all. And at the end of the day, we'll have to see who wins. But I think it'll be a nail biter right down to the wire.
Yeah, I mean they play South Carolina. That one was at home, but they obviously weren't intimidated by the SEC style play. They went to Happy Valley with 112 screaming Penn Staters, also not intimidated there. And this is interesting because this is a conference. There's not many of these left, but this conference does not have a championship game. So it is the team with the best record. They will starting next year, mind you. This is a conference. Louisville is actually on its way out. They're going to gain a few other. Rutgers is also on their way out. They're going to be joined by the likes of Tulsa and East Carolina. But for this year, for right now, Louisville has always been talked about as the top dog. And for one reason or another, nobody really bothered to figure out who the closest person to them would be. And I think it's easy to say that Rutgers, as you said, could throw scares to people, but obviously they weren't able to do that to Louisville. I think it's pretty safe to say that UCF is, if Louisville does in fact win, that they will finish second in this conference.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know why UCF doesn't get more national recognition. I think they're starting to because a lot of people
have more televised games.
And if they go in there and give them a scare on Friday night, they'll dang sure get a lot more national recognition. And you think about it, if UCF wins this game, they'll be 5-1, and they beat Penn State. I mean, they beat Louisville.
3-point loss, South Carolina.
They should be ranked.
Yeah,
they should be ranked in eyeing and staring down a BCS bowl berth. So you want to talk about big games in UCF history. This one might not get the flair that the South Carolina game got, but this is right there with all of them because UCF's never been to a BCS game. It'll be interesting to see how they play. I think they'll play good because they've seen them play hard and they never get intimidated. Coach O'Leary does a heck of a job making his kids believe, making them believe that they belong there, and they do. They're gaining momentum. We talk about them each week, and it's fun to watch them play. They didn't play the best game against Carolina, but you can. Or against they did play against Memphis because look at it, they played South Carolina, Memphis, and then Louisville. It's a trap game, classic trap game. But what did they do? They won the ball game.
They
made the plays that they needed to win on the road to win the ball game, and this is a huge game. Hopefully UCF can go in there and give them a scare. I believe they will. Louisville is going to be tough to beat. Teddy Bridgewater, they're going to have to get pressure on. That's the key to the game. Mm-hmm. They can't let him. It's because if you let Bridgewater sit there, he'll eat you alive. You got to get pressure on.
And I mean, you can ask Christian Hackenberg, you can ask Connor Shaw, how his shoulder's feeling because UCF can bring the pressure. And what I've really noticed from the UCF offense that has emerged, people has wondered from the beginning of the year. Storm Johnson, of course, is the guy, in the backfield. But when he gets banged up a little bit or when he needs a breather. Who's going to step in? Enter stage right freshman William Stanback. He's done a very good job complimenting Storm Johnson. He's more of a break it outside kind of guy. Stanback will run between the tackles. He had a lot of playing time because Storm Johnson came in and out against that Memphis game with nagging injuries. He also played special teams. He forced a huge fumble on a kick return late in the game that essentially won the game. So Storm Johnson and William Stanback definitely emerging as one of the better tandems in the conference. So to see a freshman step into that role, it can really help them. And Louisville, needs to stand back or they're going to get run over.
Yeah, they very well could. It'll be a great game. Be watching on Friday night. Possible upset in the making. If Louisville is not ready, UCF will show them what they're made of, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. But big game on Friday night for both teams.
Don't you love those games on Thursday and Friday? It's like you're gonna have a great dinner, but you also order an awesome appetizer. Yeah, that's for those people that just watch all the games.
You also have Miami and North Carolina playing Thursday night, so it's just another game.
So we have Thursday and Friday, and of course Saturday of great college football. Can you think of anything better? I can't. Moving on. The biggest game of the week, clearly, is the ACC matchup between number 5 Florida State and number 3 Clemson. If we were back in the days of the pre-BCS, this could easily be a national championship decider. Obviously, things are a little different now, but the level, take out the fact that both these teams are undefeated, and you can almost take out the fact that the winner of this probably wins their side of the conference. But I just want to see them go at it. It's like the toughest guy in school and, the person who you're pretty sure is just as tough. And you just want to see it happen, and we finally get to see 8 o'clock on Saturday.
It's like both teams have been playing, and you see that guy on the horizon, and he's getting closer and closer to you. And both, it's like one power, another power, they just collide together. That's what reminds me of this game. This is going to be probably, I hear people talking, I've heard it called the ACC game of the century. I've heard talk. I mean, it's the first time that 2 top 5 ACC opponents have played each other since 2005 when Miami beat Virginia Tech in Blacksburg. So it's a long time coming for the conference and the ACC as a whole. But you talk about this game, you talk about athleticism, you got it. You like speed, you got it. You like quarterback play, you got it. You like hard-hitting defense, you got it. You like wide receivers that can fly, you got it. You like everything that you want is. Both these teams are going to bring to the table.
I think you had to say quarterback play.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, you talk about Heisman Trophy in that game, and you talk about. I hear a lot of people saying the winner of this game is going to be the top leader, the Heisman Trophy candidate. It's going to be one heck of a game. South Carolina or Clemson. It's going to be a great atmosphere in Death Valley. They're going to be fired up for their Tigers. The Noles are going to be fired up to go in there and show what they're made of. It's going to be a great game. I can't wait to watch it. Obviously, me being the FSU guy I am, I'm going to be a little nervous watching this game, but I just can't wait to watch both two great teams, 2 great coaches, everything about it, just going head on head and see who comes on top. It'll be a great game on Saturday night.
I mean, the key to this, you have to look at both these quarterbacks, and, one of the craziest things about it is everybody's talking about Taj Boyd. They've been talking about him for 2 years now. Jameis Winston, of course, the freshman phenom on the scene. And if you want to have any idea how well these guys match up, Jameis Winston actually has more passing touchdowns than Taj Boyd this year. Taj Boyd has about 300 more passing yards. So essentially, they're doing the same level of productivity in this game. And, the interesting thing that you brought up is the bet placers have actually, even though it's in Clemson, has FSU by 3, is what you've had told me.
That's crazy to me because Clemson's ranked 3, Florida State's ranked 5. Going into the year, everybody was talking about Clemson, not a lot about Florida State. Granted, FSU's shown a lot throughout the first 5 games of the year, but it's in South Carolina, in Clemson, and they have a fifth-year senior quarterback in Taj Boyd. It's just interesting to me. I guess that Maryland game, a lot of people watched that game and really got holy crap. I mean, they didn't see that coming. I mean, a lot of people, I heard people saying if the game was in Maryland, Maryland would win.
Mm-hmm.
I hear saying if Florida State don't come out playing, they're going to lose. And
we sat right here and we said that this was going to be a good game.
I thought Maryland would hang around until the third, fourth quarter. I thought FSU would start showing their talent on it, but wow.
Yeah, I mean, Maryland had a really good shot to win this game until the opening kickoff.
Yeah,
that's essentially how that went down.
And then the first kickoff went, and that was all she wrote. But it hurts me to say it. I would probably, if I had to make a pick right now, I'd probably say Clemson for the reason because as good as Jameis Winston is, he's never been in an atmosphere like this. He's never faced a pass rush like this. Clemson's defense is underrated. And Taj Boyd's a fifth-year senior. He can spread the ball around to Sammy Watkins. He's got playmakers galore. And being at home in that rowdy crowd, I think will lead Clemson by a squeaker. I think Florida State will come in there and have a lot of pride and go in there and hit them in the mouth and be in the game with them. But I don't see it being a butt whipping at all. I see it being a tight game to the fourth quarter. And I see Clemson, for the reasons, Taj Boyd being at home, squeaking out of time. I hope I'm wrong, but you never know. I could be, but just right now, I would see Clemson probably winning it. But it's going to be it's the first matchup of the year, the 2 top 5 teams. So it's a huge game, and both teams are going to be ready. And not just the ACC, but for the national title, this game really means a lot moving forward. And whoever wins it has the eye set right there. If Oregon or Alabama slips up, one of these 2 teams will be ranked 3rd, and they'll be right there to pounce if they take care of business from here on out.
If you had to give us a score, are you thinking low scoring close or barn burner close?
I want to say that there's going to be some offense.
Yeah.
Just because I know FSU, which I was surprised to see, has a 3rd ranked defense in the nation. Clemson has a 10th ranked defense in the nation. But I see these 2 offenses, this is a lot of talent. I see there being some points put up. I want to say about 35 to maybe 30 Clemson. One of those. I think it's going to be a tight game, a lot of points scored. I think the defense will come up big when they need to, more so for Clemson because they're at home. But I would say about 35 to 30. There'll be some points scored. I don't think it'll be out of hand like in the 60s or 50s, but it'll be a great game. Clemson by 5. Hopefully I'm sitting here next week saying, how about Florida State? But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think it's very safe to say we're not going to get a Florida State-Maryland game that has hypes that, was blown out of it. Now, we didn't get a chance to talk about this because, as we said, we had an impromptu bye week. But, we made some bold predictions in the last show, and I'm not going to escape that. I didn't want anyone to think that I didn't have the show because I was wrong. We had a lot of talk about Northwestern, Ohio State. I picked Northwestern by 4 in the rain. To my knowledge, it did not rain as much as I thought it would.
I know.
And you had them by 10. And Ryan, you hit it right on the head. You said 9 to 10 points, 40 to 30. Ohio State did win, so I didn't want anyone to think that I was escaping that. Ryan, you were right on that. And now Ohio State is sitting there at number 4, 6-0 against Iowa. Do we have to believe in them yet? Is that where we're going with this now?
I'm starting to believe them more, but I don't think the pollsters are and the BCS is because I hear a lot of people saying, okay, the winner of Florida State Clemson is going to jump to number 3, and what about Ohio State? They're sitting there. I mean,
they're the quietest number 4 I've seen in quite a while.
It's crazy because you got Bama and you got Oregon, you got Clemson and Ohio State's 4, and you got Florida State, and Florida State or Clemson is going to still be in that race. The other one will be knocked out, and it's just like they're going to just jump right over Ohio State. And I'm starting to believe in them more. I mean, they still have some pretty tough games, but I don't see any game on this schedule left. I don't see that they'll probably win. I mean, they have some tough teams. They got Iowa. What Iowa can do every now and then. They just come out of nowhere and just beat you. I mean, Penn State. I mean, you know what Penn State's made of. But Purdue and Illinois and Indiana and Michigan. Michigan's not nothing what we thought they were. So I think if there's 3 undefeated teams. Or 3 or 4 undefeated teams, I don't see Ohio State being in there unless a bunch of teams slip up ahead of them. If they have Ohio State, or Oregon lose, and then Florida State or Clemson lose, and 3 of those teams losing the way they're playing right now. I don't know if that's going to happen. So they just got to keep on winning and try to kill people, and hope that 2 teams in front of them slip up, or else they're going to get left out of the picture, even if they do go undefeated. And it's unfortunate for the Buckeyes. I couldn't imagine being in that situation going undefeated. But I believe in them a little bit more, and looking at the schedule, I don't think they'll lose. I really think they'll run the tail from here on out, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to get into the national championship.
I mean, I think a situation like that seems to happen almost every year where a team goes undefeated and is not invited, to the party. But you look at Ohio State now, and I don't think they're in that bad of a spot. They're number 4. The hardest part of their schedule is clearly behind them. And if I'm an Ohio State fan, which could not be farther from the truth, but if I was, you're comfortably sitting at number 4, and you just looking around you waiting for everyone else to mess up. Oregon has to play Stanford, and they have to play UCLA. Bama, still is in the SEC, so they're still capable teams. If I'm at number 4 and I do my job, I'm confident. What year have we not had a big upset in the last 2-3 weeks of the season? One of those guys, someone is bound to happen. I agree they have to do things to make them want to move up and don't get leapfrogged. But for some reason, I feel like some people still think they're on ban because they're just not being talked about. And Northwestern's a good team, and they played a couple other good teams. They played Wisconsin. They were able to beat Wisconsin. Ohio State's doing everything needed, and for some reason, it's just not enough to get them publicity.
I don't know. I guess it's the style. The style points are there and killing teams every week. But you really go into this Ohio State program, and I do think there might be time to give them a little bit more respect because they do have the longest winning streak in the nation. Urban Meyer and Ohio State went undefeated last year. They're sitting at 6-0 right now.
All right.
That's 18 wins in a row, and you would think you won 18 wins in a row. It just goes to show you the difference between the SEC bias right now. If Alabama won 18 games in a row, where would they be?
Yeah,
we won in the nation.
We would hear about it every day.
Exactly, and Ohio State's won 18 in a row, and they're sitting number 4 in the nation. So you do have to start wondering, and it's not really fair, and that's why the playoff is coming up, and also a lot of things because top 4 teams in the nation will play each other. So, but they do need a little bit more respect because they are winning the games. They made the schedule's not the toughest you've ever seen, but they're going out there and doing what they need to do. And it's very capable they can make the national championship. I think they're going to have to stay at number 4. They'll be number 4 after this week unless Bama or Oregon goes down because the winner at Clemson and Florida State will go to 3. They're going to have to beat teams handily and hope for something in front of them to happen. And like you say, it usually does happen. So they're still sitting there, still a chance. But it's just unfortunate for them because they don't really control their own destiny, and that's what you want is to control your own destiny.
I mean, like I was saying earlier, there's teams that go undefeated every year that don't get in, and sometimes it just makes for some awkward placement. I mean, here's something that could easily happen again. Last year we had Northern Illinois get into, the Orange Bowl, winning, the MAC, which is a relatively weak conference, and, you look at that schedule, and there's no reason why that can't happen again. And I think the rule is they have to be ranked top 5 if they're going to win a conference like that to get the at-large bid. I don't think they're going to jump that far, but there could easily be 3 or 4 teams that are undefeated. But it's the level of competition has to come into account, and it's not always that you were bad. It's just that somebody else was better, and a team like Ohio State will benefit from the playoffs that start next season because it is the top 4. But just a little impromptu debate here. Do you think if they're going to go ahead and do this playoff thing, is 4 teams enough, or is that just going to, tease people?
It's hard to say because you'll never know how many undefeated teams there are.
Right.
If there's 6 teams, then there's going to be 2 teams that say, no, it's not enough. But there's only 4 teams that will work out perfectly. I think it just depends on the circumstances of that particular season. And for this year, like a year like this, maybe it could be just a teaser because there's a lot of good teams. People are, even though LSU's got a loss, people are going to say, hey, man, they should be in there too because of the teams they beat. So it just depends on the season. Maybe next year we're going to have a year like we had last year where Notre Dame went to the national championship. And I think we both agree that Notre Dame wasn't a national championship caliber team. They just, a lot of teams lost in front of us. So last year, probably so, like a year like this where there's so many good teams and so many equal teams, it just depends. And we'll have to see for next year how that works out. I mean, you can't find out until you see it happen. But it'll be interesting to see moving forward. But there's going to be a team I think there might be a team this season that's going to run the table and might be left out of the national championship. And probably, in my opinion, if there is going to be, it's probably going to be Ohio State. Just because they have to have somebody losing from them. It could happen, it couldn't. But it's going to be hard for that team to run the table and win and do it they're supposed to do and still not make the national championship.
See, the one thing that disheartens me about the playoffs is I don't want the bowl games to lack prestige. I mean, we already kind of feel that, well, not me in particular, but people already feel that way. People were talking about, oh, Ohio State's not going to get in the national championship. Well, guess what, guys? They're going to go to the Rose Bowl. And last time I heard, Rose Bowl is a pretty big game. So really what it comes down to me is I'm just worried that the bowl game, because that is the difference between college and pro, is in college, multiple teams can have successful years. In pro football, one team leaves with the Lombardi and everyone else is trying to figure out how they did it. In college, I forget exactly how many bowl games, but half those people leave the night with a happy ending. So it's just one of those things, when the playoffs does start, I don't want the bowl games to be in obscurity. There's actually talk of expansion in bowl games because of these new conferences. There's going to be one in Newport Richey, Florida, I believe I had read, and there's one other, I think it's just the Miami Bowl was the name of it from what I heard. I don't know if they're changing that. But they are adding a couple of bowl games in, so that's a good sign. But I mean, you both agree. I think the bowl games don't need to lose prestige just to make the national championship mean more, because I think it means plenty as it is.
Yeah, and coming off your point there, not just only the big BCS games, little teams that, it might be the Little Caesars Bowl, but they win that game. A team that doesn't get a chance to go to the national championship, they can go beat a team from a major conference, and that can make their season.
Right.
So these bowl games, and from a fan's perspective, when it's a Tuesday night and there's nothing else on, and you just turn on a random game, the San Diego Poinciana County Union Bowl can be on, and BYU can be on against San Diego State, and number 3 can, as linebacker, I forget his name, I watched him last year, can have 18 interceptions. It's ridiculous. It's just great to watch these teams face off in each other. Teams like SMU and getting into these games, and Duke, that just, they're not going to have a chance.
Yeah, their first bowl-eligible season in 12 years, it matters.
You see the Little Caesars Bowl from last year, Western Kentucky and Central Michigan, 24-20 game, and they're both 7-6. You tell me a game like that isn't great to watch for these programs. To your point, that's what makes college football.
Exactly.
People get excited for more games. Teams can leave happier, and it's just great football, and these bowl games mean a lot. You want to have momentum going to the next year, and hopefully the playoff system does not ruin this, because that would be a shame.
Right, because there's even teams, for example, like the Gator Bowl is played in Jacksonville, and it just gives small teams, Northwestern and Mississippi State, from last year, teams they can go and play in a pro level stadium, and not only and also things like the Pinstripe Bowl, which is played in Yankee Stadium. That's the most fascinating concept to me, is they're able to convert a baseball stadium for a college game. It's different. I remember last year, West Virginia and Syracuse, that game took place in the middle of the snow. It was just fun to watch, and all these different things. There were so many. I believe there's 120 Division I college programs, so you can't cut off 90 of them for the top 30. Like these other teams still matter. They still have scholarships. They're still making plays, and they deserve to still come out at the end of the year, with something to be proud of.
Yeah, it's just like you say, it's what makes college football college football. It'll be interesting to see. We still have a lot of football left this year, and we'll have one more year at least left of great bowl games that we can hold on to. We'll see how it works out. Everything be new next year. But just for right now, still a lot of great games for this season, a lot of bowl games we played this year. And I cannot wait to watch to see how it plays out, because right now we got a lot of good teams. It's interesting to see who will be in the national championship at the end of the year.
Bottom line, don't mess with our bowl games. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you guys for joining us after the little hiccup from last week. College Football Across the Nation signing off. Phil Nunziata and Ryan Mock. Thanks for joining us.